To quote one of Jane Sharp's favourite expressions, as I said before in my previous videos, the Midwives Book was published in 1671. So have we, the reader in 2020, got even the faintest hope of ever understanding it? Probably. And maybe there is a reason why. Jane Sharp wrote this book to help the midwives of England understand childbirth, reproduction and the care of infants. Of course, those women didn't have any kind of formal training. They didn't take Bachelor of Science degrees in midwifery. They learned by experience. Maybe they were the eldest daughter in a large family and they witnessed the births of their siblings. Maybe it was that girl's mother who, after 11 or 12 pregnancies, felt that she had the experience to help and support other women. Now, the English language is constantly evolving. No better example have we got of that than the year 2020. How many of you are using phrases like social distancing and stay safe on New Year's Day 2020? So suppose that you have just arrived time traveller in 1670s England. You are a heavily pregnant woman. You are about to give birth. And you've somehow managed to get hold of a copy of Jane Sharp's book. You're going to want to understand what she means. Here's a quick glossary. So congratulations, you've just done a bit of useful preparation for what comes next. Look past this, and Jane is encouraging, she's not bossy. When giving advice on how to deal with a footling breech, she says, let the woman in childbirth be laid upon her back. She doesn't say, put the woman in this position. It's much more friendly. The mother is an active participant. She's not just somebody to perform procedures on. Jane Sharp had at least 30 years experience as a midwife, so rest assured, pregnant time traveller. She knows what she's doing. Some advice that she gives hasn't actually changed at all. Well before labour starts, she reminds you to get all of the linen and the other essentials for the birth. After all, you don't want to be searching for things at the last minute. When your throes get going, it's time to retire to your bedroom. Rest as you need to, sleep if you can. For an energy boost, Jane advises a light meal, warm broth, poached eggs, bread, and wine or water to drink. Again, these nourishing foods could also be offered if the labour was prolonged, just to keep your strength up. Now, you would expect Jane to discuss an ordinary straightforward birth before she deals with anything else, but no. It sounds very macabre, but one of the first things she actually discusses is managing stillbirth. She implies that midwives were trained to use all sorts of surgeon's tools. The instructions she does give are, to be honest, quite graphic, and for that reason I'm just going to gloss over them here. All I'll say is she doesn't mince her words. She's also aware of Cesarean Sections. She understands them to have been named after Julius Caesar, which a lot of people did, but she views them, of course, in a time with no antiseptics, no anaesthetics. They are an absolute last resort. But she does relate various second-hand anecdotes of cases where Cesarean sections were performed and both mother and child survived, so it wasn't unknown. Now, if you were giving birth in the 17th century, the chances are that you are going to need something more than just medical assistance. Jane notes that the labouring mother might choose any comfortable position to deliver her baby. That might be lying down, sitting on a stool or a chair, even resting on the side of the bed, supported by other women who came to the labour. Birth at that time was quite a community affair, really. Those women might be your mother, sister, cousins, neighbours, somebody to give you support. And sometimes that might be literal support. Jane implies that she has attended women who favoured sitting on a long piece of cloth with a friend standing either side to hold each end up like a kind of a swing or hammock, while two others held her shoulders during the pushing stage. And on page 125, she also shows an awareness that women-only birth is not the only option. It is said in Holland that men are wont to be present at their wives' labours as well as women, and that few of the women use the stools, but they sit in their husbands' laps when they are delivered. If Jane was based in London, which she seems to have been based on the fact that she published her book with a London printer, she probably mixed with migrants from all over Europe, all over the world. And if she delivered some of their babies, then she probably did get to know their different customs. But it's when she talks about impending birth itself that Jane manages to slot one of her funniest expressions into the text. Midwives call it the water, and when that runs forth, the birth is near. The infant can no longer stay there, that is in the womb, than a naked man in a heap of snow. She's got a wonderful turn of phrase. You can picture that, can't you? So congratulations, you, 1670s new mother, have survived childbirth and without any painkillers. You've been through quite an ordeal. If you've had a son, you can look forward to a lying-in period of 30 days. Mothers of daughters, you can have 40. I don't know why there was a difference, but it was absolutely normal to Jane Sharp that there would be. Now, some aspects of postpartum care haven't changed very much at all today. Jane suggests that the woman should be bandaged with a linen cloth held firmly in place. We would have maternity pads that are disposable for the post-birth bleeding, but the idea is basically the same. And of course, Jane must have delivered hundreds of babies in her 30 or 40 years. She knew that childbirth was an exhausting thing, and so she sensibly advises that the new mother might like some broth or caudle before she is left to rest. And of course, to quote Jane herself, as I said before, you're living in a time where religion is really, really important. More particularly, being a practising Anglican is really, really important if you don't want to get fined for recusancy. So during the first 3 days, she advises keeping the mother's room dark and quiet, perfect for rest, in which time the new mother can be praising God for her safe delivery. So do remember to find a moment for some thanksgiving. After all, if you've got through childbirth in a time with no drugs to control a hemorrhage, no blood transfusions, no antibiotics if you've got an infection, no safe, painless Cesarean section if things get very difficult, you probably would want to thank God. If you had had a difficult labour, your midwife might well take some steps that we wouldn't like at all today. She might wrap you up in a newly flayed sheepskin and rub hare's blood on your stomach. I don't know how you feel about that. For myself, I will pass, thank you very much. But you may be relieved to know that bathing in a normal bath of water with soothing ingredients like chervil or honey of roses was also recommended. Sweet almond oil, the kind of thing that we use in aromatherapy these days as a base oil, was also recommended to soothe any grazes or injuries caused by the baby's delivery. So I can totally see the sense in that it is said to be a non-irritating oil today. And then of course, during your 30 or 40 days of confinement, you might be given easily digestible, protein-based meals. Chicken or pullets, Jane suggests, before gradually returning to your normal diet. Jane also advises some things that we don't really use today. Fortifying extras like elderberries were recommended to build up the woman's strength. Beer, ale and spiced wines were also quite acceptable. And of course, you'd almost certainly have some female friends and family for company, and some respite from conjugal relations during the lying-in period. Now, Jane never uses a term sometimes applied to this, but in Francis Gross's 1811 Dictionary of the Vulgar Tongue, he makes a reference to the Gander Month. The Gander Month he defines as that month in which a man's wife lies in, wherefore during that time husbands plead a sort of indulgence in matters of gallantry. In other words, the wife is taken to her bed. If she's not available for sexual relations, he's effectively got a licence to look elsewhere. In other words, the new father might claim that he was justified in seeking alternative female company. Now, I'm sure that there were many husbands who did look elsewhere, and I'm equally sure that there were many husbands who did remain faithful to their wives. As we have looked at before, Jane recognises that couples did, and continue to today, marry for love. So I'm sure that there were many men who respected their wives enough to stay faithful in this time. As a new mother, you are excused household and marital duties until you have been churched. This ritual, described in the Anglican Book of Common Prayer, originated with the idea that the blood loss after childbirth made a woman unclean, and so she had to be purified to be accepted back into her community. And of course it also offered the new mum a way to give thanks in public for surviving the ordeal of childbirth in her parish church, where all her neighbours and friends would see her, and then of course she'd get back to normal life. Now, my grandma, who was born in 1906, referred to this ceremony as shaking of feathers, so maybe that comes from the goose and gander connection. I hope this trip back in time was amusing, if not informative. If you've heard of any of the phrases related to churching used today, please let me know, because what I really want to know is, do the Church of England still do churching? I was raised Catholic, and I know that it was definitely being practised in the 19th century from some family books that I've got, but I've never met anybody who has undergone a Catholic equivalent ceremony in the 21st century. In my next video, the final part of my exploration of Jane Sharp's Midwives book, I'm going to explore some of her other advice to see whether we might agree with what she suggests today, and whether we'd find her attitude reckless, ignorant, or maybe even dangerous. So I hope that will be up for too long, and in the meantime, thanks for watching.